Hello again, everyone. This is Michael Laurier and Helen Glover, and you are watching or listening to King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake. Helen, it's good to be here again.
Absolutely.
Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 love languages and why they're so important in relationships. So we might just get straight into this. And what I will say, Helen, is that I have, as a relationship coach, as well as all the other things that I do, the 5 love languages has been something that has been absolutely instrumental in teaching people about relationships and how to relate to each other well, and understanding what gestures of love actually work and what doesn't. And so we'll kick this off by listing the 5 love languages and then having a discussion. So they are words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving gifts. Helen, what's your love language?
Words of affirmation and acts of service.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. So my love languages, my primary love language is words of affirmation. So we get on well together. We just got to tell each other how awesome we are. Which we do anyway, don't we?
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? The one that works for you, you think it'll work for the other person. So you give them the words of affirmation because you know it works for you. And
Yep.
if it's not their love language, you just really, they're going, okay, but it doesn't mean the same thing. And that's where it gets lost, doesn't it? Because it doesn't
Yeah,
work for
absolutely.
them. So
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. That's what happens in relationships, right? We show people how we love them, or that we love them in a way that we would like to be loved. And
yeah.
so and that's where that's where relationships tend to fall over a fair bit, because then what you get by the time they come to me, or you, if but by the time they come to me, it's like, I don't know what he/she is talking about.
Mm,
I show them how I feel and how much I love them all the time, but he/she is always ungrateful and
mm.
doesn't even acknowledge the fact that I do show love. And the other person says, well, I don't see it. What are you talking about? You think that doing the dishes is showing me love? You think that by wanting sex all the time is showing me love, and etc. And we go down this big rabbit hole of resentment and bitterness and feeling unloved and unheard.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of them for me, I'm like, I'm borderline. I'm borderline. Like, I really love physical touch as well. If I was in a relationship where somebody just said to me, you're great, um, but they didn't hug me and love me, then
Yep.
I would find that disconnection as well. So there's this working out, like, for example, if somebody gives me a gift, though, I feel quite differently about that. I'm not big on gifts. I mean, it's lovely, but
Yep.
it doesn't mean much, you know. So so yeah, there's some, even though we only have one primary, they can be followed by others, you know. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And what I've found is that people's love languages can actually change over time, depending upon what's happening in the relationship and how they're feeling. So what I've found is that when I first start working with someone, it's like, let's do the love language test and see what your love language is. And then a month into it, when people are really focused and they're really intentional about showing each other love in their love language, you go back and do it again, and the results change. And we always seem to find that this is the case, because people's love languages can change and they can shift and ebb and flow over time, depending upon
Mm.
what they feel is lacking in the relationship.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And so sometimes your love language can feel empty if it's
Mm,
not being backed up.
yep,
So it's interesting to notice what is coming from behind it, whether it's intentional and what the energy is behind it. And also to learn the love languages of your children as well, and of other people around you. I
yep.
always find that that is, as a family dynamic, it's really interesting to look at everybody's love language as to how they all operate, because it works into family dynamics.
Totally, totally. And I've found that because little Crystal is only 4, that's my daughter, and I find that she has all the love languages all the time, right? So she loves receiving gifts, she loves physical touch. She loves words of affirmation. She loves all of them, right? And I
Mm.
think that then as personalities develop and as we start to feel a sense of self, we then have a preference. We
Yeah.
then have a preference, don't we? At what
Mm.
age do you think we start to have preferences around how we like to be loved?
Well, I think as well it goes back to your experiences as well, doesn't it? Do you think love
Mm.
language comes from what you might be lacking at the time?
I think love languages, yes, your primary love language will always be based on what you feel is lacking in your relationship or within
Mm,
yourself as well. A lot of the
in
times it
yourself
can be,
growing up.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, a lot of the times it can be projection of what you're not giving yourself. And so
mm,
and so this is especially important for people who are single as well, not just in relationships, but people who are single. You can always do the love language test. And if anyone's interested, you go to thelovelanguages.com and you can actually do the love language test. And you can do it as an individual or as a member of a couple. And then
mm,
when you do it as an individual, you then know how to nurture yourself as well, because I think that's
mm.
so important.
Because I think as we get into teenage years, you see teenagers starting to kind of not be impressed by things.
Mm,
And I feel that that's probably when you start to really work out your own way of receiving love.
mm,
But it's interesting to think that it could be what, like you say, what's lacking in yourself at the time, what you've really not come to believe about yourself.
yep.
And so, yeah, so things, although we love all of them, the one that really hits us when we need to feel love, it probably comes from what's lacking at the time of that teenage time. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. And when we think about, and it's interesting because as we get a little bit older, we find that a lot of people, either their primary or their secondary love language is words of affirmation.
Mm,
And this is what I've found, right? And that's because I think that in our society and just generally in terms of parenting, what we do is we lack the ability to offer words of encouragement to our children and offer words of encouragement to each other as well. And so when somebody isn't being told, you've done well, or I'm proud of you, or as a teenager, you've done well, I'm proud of you, that was really good, I think you're whatever it is, and we just
mm,
give people words of affirmation, then of course, when they lack that, that's going to be their primary love language. And again, I find this in couples when we talk about couples, when there are problems in a relationship, generally the first thing that suffers is intimacy, physical intimacy, right? And
mm,
so when they turn up and we do the love language test, more often than not, the primary love language for both people is physical touch.
mm,
And then as we become aware of that, and then people start kissing more, hugging more, holding hands, I guess, when they're walking, if that's their thing, and doing all sorts of things as well as sexual intimacy as well, we then find that down the track when we do the love language test again, physical touch is down the list a little bit. So
mm,
it's so important. Like it helps to start the process towards connection between people and connection with self as well. These love languages, they're quite powerful. The book was
mm.
written was published in 1992, and it became a New York Times bestseller very quickly. And I
Mm.
think there's a reason for that because it's so powerful.
Well, this is the thing as well, isn't it? When you do it, you can see where that would come from. So when you're
Yep.
analyzing a relationship, if physical touch comes up as number one for both parties, you're kind of like, okay, it's a red flag, isn't it? And you don't really need to look much further than, well, what's happening in your relationship intimately. How's that going? Because if that wasn't number one, it wouldn't be so obvious. So
Mm.
it's funny to notice as well that quality time, a lot of people they're at work all the time, they got children, they never see each other. And a lot of children want quality time, and a lot
Yep.
of relationships often say, well, there's no quality time. And then
Mm.
when they start spending quality time, then again, it changes. Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting because we also find that people judge each other's love languages. So I know that based on personal and professional experience, that when somebody's primary love language, for instance, is gift giving or receiving gifts, that is a highly judged love language, because people go, "What? I didn't realize you were so superficial." And it's actually not about superficiality, and I want to just highlight this because it is the most judged, harshly judged of all the 5 love languages, because we understand, and followed by words of affirmation, because words of affirmation, the shadow of that is the need for validation, right? And so when
Mm,
we start to think about, um, why do we need words of affirmation? It's like most people just want to be appreciated in relationships, right?
mm,
It's not so much about the need for external validation. It's more about knowing that what I do, who I am, and how I show up for you and in our relationship is appreciated, right?
mm,
And then, but the most highly judged one, harshly judged one, is receiving gifts, because
mm.
then it goes into superficiality and materialism and all sorts of things. I
Mm.
wouldn't mind. Do you want to just speak into that a little bit? Because I know that's not necessarily your love language, but what would you say when somebody judges gift giving as a love language?
There's a huge connotation around gift giving that
Yeah,
people do it to make up for something else. So, I mean, I know there's that thing about giving flowers. Somebody gives flowers when there's been an argument, not just for giving flowers, or that, oh, look, I've not been around for a little while. Here's a big gift. So
yeah,
there is a connotation that gift giving as well is an apology.
or buying
So
love.
yeah, so that's what comes up for me around it, rather than superficiality so much as, is it making up for something else that's lacking,
Mm,
that you feel that needs to be replaced by something that's a showing of money rather than a showing of affection.
yep.
And that's where it gets sticky, because if that showing of that gift is a showing of love for you, then of course it would work.
Mm.
But for me, unless I had all the other things, I would see it as a makeup for what really is important.
Yep, yep. And this is a funny thing, isn't it? Because then we see, we've all heard of this. It's like a man brings a flowers home for his wife or his partner, and she goes, "What do you want? Why are you bringing me flowers? What do you want?" Right? whereas, if he perhaps did something for her, eased her load, however that is, whatever that means for the couple,
Mm,
that would be more appreciated, I think. And this is where people kind of misunderstand the love languages. It's not so much about buying love or getting approval. It's like, how does my partner recognize gestures of love from me? Because I love them, and I want to
yeah.
show them that I love them, but maybe what I'm doing isn't working. And this is where we go to self-reflection, and we often find that we are usually giving our partner love, or showing gestures of love, demonstrating gestures of love in a way that we would recognize as love, right? So,
Mm,
and so this is where these love languages are so damn powerful, because when
mm,
you discover what your partner's love language is, and when you discover what yours is, and you start to understand that, wow, this is why my partner's not feeling loved, because I've been showing them love in my love language, which
mm,
might be whatever it is. One of the other ones is acts of service, right? And people go, "What? I just got to do things for him or do things for her, and then he'll feel loved," for instance. And it's like, yes, but don't just do things like wash the dishes or whatever it might be. Do something that you know he or she is going to do or has to do, and then they don't have to do it again. Right. So
mm,
one of the things in our relationship is Amanda does not like filling the car with petrol. Right. For whatever reason, I don't know what the hell happens. She doesn't like filling the car with petrol. And so once a week, I will usually make a point over the weekend to go to the service station, fill the car with petrol, and then I'll vacuum it, clean it, whatever, wash it,
mm,
et cetera, right? And for
mm.
her, she gets to sit in the car on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning or whatever, and it's all nice and clean. The tank's full, and she feels loved. That's an
Yes.
act of service, right? It's an act of
Mm,
service.
mm,
And yeah,
mm. And that's the thing between for me, that's the correlation between words of affirmation and acts of service, because you can say, "I love you," or I think you're wonderful, and you're my love and all that. But if it's not backed up by action,
Mm,
by doing something like that, that the partner knows that that would be really, really helpful or really, really useful to you, then it does fall empty. So one for me can't exist without the action, because I don't want just an emptiness to having something said that is needed to be said. I want to be able to feel that that's what's needed.
mm, mm.
Mm,
How have you experienced this in your life, Helen? And I'm happy to share this as well, but how have you
mm,
experienced this in your life where it's like your partner might feel like they're showing you love, but you're not seeing it?
mm. Yeah. Well, I think yeah, there definitely has been. It's so long since I've had a partner. I'm having to think.
Oh, Helen, if there's anyone out there, Helen's on the market. Just letting you know, she's on the
Okay.
market and available. And by the way, it was her birthday yesterday, so happy
Ah,
birthday, Helen,
thank
from
you. Thank
everyone
you.
that's watching or listening. And drop a comment in the drop a happy birthday in the comments down below for Helen, and let's give her lots of love. And if you're out there looking for a partner, Helen's on the market.
Oh my God, stop. Oh my God. Oh dear. So anyway,
Just
um,
know that her love language is words of affirmation. So you have to tell her how beautiful she is, how wonderful she is. All right. Sorry, Helen. Keep going. I know I'm embarrassing you now.
oh God. Okay. So what will sometimes when if I'm really struggling with something and I just need a confidence boost, I've got some really great friends that I can ring and I go, I just need you to tell me I'm awesome and tell me all the things you know about me. So they remind me who I am when I'm
Yep.
struggling.
Mhm.
And that actually is the best kind of words of affirmation for me, just to remind me who I know I am. But you forget when you're struggling to, or facing a fear, or struggling with a decision, or something like that, or trying something new. And that
Mm,
is really, it gives me a boost to remind me about myself when I feel that I'm not at my strongest. And so that's also an act of service for them to reply to me in that
mm,
way, to give me
yep.
what I need in that moment. So
Mm,
that's what I mean where they're linked. It feels really strong and true, and that's one way that it is definitely displayed in my life. Yeah.
yeah.
What about
Cool.
you?
Cool. I would probably say that it's been in the past, and again, this is because it was kind of lacking in the past. It would have been words of affirmation because
Mm,
as a man, I will say this, I will speak into this from a man's perspective. And it's like most men want to serve. Most men want to serve and be of service to others.
mm,
And we do so because we want to, and we want to contribute to the lives of the people that we love. But then by the same token, you do that for a period of time. And if no one says thank you and appreciates you, it's like, is this just a waste of my time because nobody's actually saying anything? No one's appreciating me. And so at one point in my life, it was about words of affirmation because I didn't feel like they were there. I didn't feel like I was being appreciated. I didn't feel like there was gratitude there for all of the time, effort, et cetera, that I would spend helping to make other people's lives better.
mm,
And so, but then I would say over the last little while, especially over the last 12 months or so, for me, it's been more acts of service. And that's more because I'm so busy all the time with all the things that I do from a business perspective.
mm,
And I lead, like I've got 20 people now who are either coaches or on my team helping me with Forging Excalibur. And so now in my relationship with Amanda, it's become about acts of service. And that is her doing things for me to lighten the load for me
mm.
so that I can go about my day and do the things that I need to do. And she's taking care of whatever thing it is, right? So that I
Yeah,
don't have to do it. And it makes my life that little bit easier and eases the load. Um, and of course I reciprocate that in different ways for her with her love language. And but then life happens sometimes as well, and life gets in the way, and sometimes we forget what our partner's love language is, or we revert back to what we used to do, which is show our partner love in our love language, because
mm,
that's an unconscious thing, right? We go, well, I'm seeking acts of service. I'm seeking
mm,
for you to help me make my life easier. And so I'm going to make your life easier. I'm going to do an
Mm,
active service for you. When in fact, what you actually want is quality time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
But
mm,
then you do all these things unconsciously and you don't spend time with your partner when their love language is acts of, which maybe quality time. And then, of course, they feel unappreciated and they feel that like they're not important. So
mm,
it's something to be so conscious of all the time in relationship,
mhm,
to always show our partner love in their love language and not in
mm,
ours, and to always revisit as well every month or 2 or 3 months, to go back and do the love language test and just check in and make sure that your love language is still the same. Because if it changes and there is a point where it shifts and changes, you want to be aware of that so that you can show your partner love language in whatever their new love language is.
mm. Do you think a relationship is at its best when all five of them are balanced? Or do you think it really is about having one main one?
Good question. Good question. I would say that all of them are important. I think that
Mm,
all of them are important, and I don't think necessarily balance is the answer. I think awareness of whatever our
mm,
love language is at that phase in our relationship or that stage in our relationship is more important than trying to create balance. Because when you try to create balance, what will happen is you will show love equally to to your partner using all of the love languages. And that can be
mm,
quite exhausting because that's unsustainable over time, right? It's
mm,
unsustainable. And it's also mostly some of them will be unnecessary, because one of the things that you get when you do the love language test is you get your primary love language, your secondary love language, and then usually the final three are uh, in terms of their percentages, they can be quite insignificant, right?
mm,
And so if your partner, one of the fourth or fifth rated ones is receiving gifts and you're trying to balance them all and do 20% of each, um, I don't think that's gonna be helpful.
mm,
And I don't think it's
mm,
sustainable either. And what you're doing is you're actually taking a lot from the primary love language. And so the
mm,
person will end up not feeling loved anyway.
mm, mm.
That's what I
Yeah.
would say. I would say concentrate on the top 2, the first one more so than anything else, um, and that could shift and change over time.
Mm,
What
yeah.
would you say?
Um,
And just a
I think
reminder
it's
before you answer that question, everyone that's watching, I can see a few people that are watching. It was Helen's birthday yesterday, so make sure you drop a happy birthday in the comments for Helen, and she turned 35, just so you know.
oh, yeah, for a few years now. Um, yeah, so I think if you do, everybody really needs to make quality time important in a relationship.
Mm,
So that seems like just a necessary thing for a relationship. I think if that is your main love language and it's lacking, then it would probably cause more issues in the relationship. But quality time is important, and I think physical touch is important as well for that intimacy and for the closeness, and for as well for just the family dynamic, that children get hugs and they see their parents being affectionate with each other, etc.
mm.
um and yeah, so for me, because my top two are kind of words of affirmation and acts of service, those come out for me. Oh, thank you.
There's
Those
one
come
happy birthday. Let's keep it coming. Let's keep them coming.
Thank you. Those two come out for me when I'm nervous, or when I need a push, or when I need some extra encouragement. Those are the times where I really need those top two. When I'm feeling a bit worried or insecure about something, that's when it really works for me. Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I would agree with that actually. As you were talking, I'm thinking, yeah, that makes some sense. You do need all of them, but there are ones that need to be, I guess, presented more in proportion to the others at
Mm,
different times in the relationship. And a lot of this as well, we haven't. We should probably talk about this in one of our episodes. Like, really go deep into what is good quality communication in a relationship, and what does that even mean. And so I was just going to add to all of that and say it really requires us as individuals to take responsibility for how well we communicate in that moment. So if
mm,
we're starting to struggle, if we're starting to feel a little bit down on ourselves, whatever it might be happening, to be able to show up to our partner and go, you know what, I'm just not feeling. Here's another one. I'm actually not feeling
Thank you.
as I usually might, and I would really appreciate, you know, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you do have to ask for what you need. People get all annoyed about not being able to get what they need, but they haven't actually expressed that they need it. And I find that a really weird thing. I don't
Yeah,
understand why you don't say, "Oh, darling, I'm feeling blah blah blah. I need this right now." I don't think there's a problem with that. I think it's really open, and it makes life easy for everybody to be
yeah,
able to
totally.
know what you need. And interesting as well that humor isn't in the five languages. Do you find
Mm.
that? Because I think humor and fun is really important in a relationship as well.
Humor and yeah, I agree. Humor and fun. Do you reckon they are stages or states? Because when we think about relationships, when we think about relationships in the context of life, and we think of the five love languages, words of affirmation, right? It's easy to find things that you can be grateful for in your partner, and tell them what you're grateful for. That's words of affirmation. Um, Quality time is something that can be scheduled, I reckon, around work and life and kids and all sorts of things. Physical touch as well, if required, but physical touch is one of those things that can also be a very passing thing as well. Like a tap on the backside, or a arm around the shoulder, or whatever it might be.
Mm,
Whatever it might be. Acts of service, receiving gifts. Fun and humor. I think fun and humor can be injected into all of them, can't they?
mm.
Really, I
So
think fun. Yeah,
yeah, I think humor is a really beautiful thing to be able to get from your partner, to be able to raise you up, to be able to make things lighter, and
yeah,
um, it's definitely something that I think is yeah. I mean, I hear it all the time. Oh, it really makes me laugh. I love that, and she's really really funny. That's why I love
yeah,
her, and
yeah.
so that is whether that's an attraction thing then, or is it a love language? Or is it just an
Well,
attract
I don't know. It could be. It could be an attraction thing. It could be, but I know. I mean, eventually you're going to run out of dad jokes, aren't you?
Let's
Eventually,
hope so.
and a quick Google search fixes that little problem. But, but yeah, look, fun and humor are important, because being lighthearted in a relationship and not taking things and people and situations and circumstances so seriously all the time definitely helps to it definitely helps to ease the pressure, especially when there's
Mhm,
a lot going on. So yeah, I
mm,
think there are elements that could be included. I mean, there's lots of other things that we could go into, isn't there?
mm,
Fun and humor, lightheartedness, the ability to be able to show up, the ability to be able to just stop and be present. They're all things that are really important in
mm,
relationships. And a lot of it is about our state. Are we a confident, decisive person, or do we procrastinate, and are we indecisive? You know,
mm,
they're things that can be attractive, but they're not necessarily something that people seek for
mm,
themselves. It's more about something that a partner embodies, I think.
mm.
So I might
More
say that
attributes, really.
more attributes and
Mm,
virtues and things like that. So Selena agrees. Yep, humor is an absolute must, and it really is. It
mm,
really is. I think when in conjunction, because you can also have a very funny partner who doesn't take. There's a shadow to this, and that
yeah.
is the jester, right? And that is the jester in a relationship that doesn't take anything seriously, and and
Mm,
can't and can't communicate well, and laughs at everything and finds a joke and is lighthearted about everything, but can't
mm,
actually take life too seriously because they're actually avoiding something within themselves. So there's there's a shadow to everything, and I think
mm,
everything in balance and integration with each other.
mm. And acts of service, of course, the shadow to that is the resentment of
Yeah,
the expectation that will. I mean, you can see the dynamic. If somebody's an acts of service person and the other person is a words of affirmation person, it's kind of like, well, I'm doing all these things for you, but you're not saying anything. You're not doing anything back. It's
Yep.
just, it would be really difficult, that dynamic. So you're wanting to make sure that your love languages match as well, that they are actually in line. So
Yeah,
yeah, just
totally.
very dangerous for sure.
Yeah,
Mm.
you're so right, Mark. Jesters are very dangerous, and the shadow of all of these things are very dangerous. So let's just really quick, because we talk about shadow in nearly every episode, Helen.
Mm.
So I think it's important. I think it's important for us to just go down the list very quickly and go, what's the shadow of all these things, right? So
Mm.
acts of service, you're right, resentment, and acts of service. What could be the shadow of acts of service? It's like there is a resentment, but there's also entitlement, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
absolutely. And it's, I expect it to be reciprocated. There's this sets expectations of
yep,
return,
mm,
and
mm,
what's in it
mm.
for me. Mm.
Yep, yep. What would you say the shadow of receiving gifts are?
Um, that you would owe them something, that, like, but I just bought you this gift. Doesn't
Yep.
that, So I think that's a tough one. It's more, is that expectation again, do you think?
I might even say that the shadow of receiving gifts as the person giving the gifts, the shadow of that is then you rely too much on the how much the gift costs and how much time and effort you put into it as an overall gesture of love, and that's all that's actually required. And
Mm,
then in fact, I think all of these we can probably put entitlement as the shadow and
mm,
resentment as the shadow to all of this, to
mm,
all of them, but there probably are specific shadow aspects of each and
mm,
every one. But I would
mm,
say that too heavily reliant on time, energy, and money, right? And at the and then you neglect other parts of your
mm,
relationship.
mm.
Yep.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be the shadow to all the love languages.
mm. And physical touch would be rejection, do you think?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes, yes. The shadow to physical touch would be rejection. The shadow
mm,
to quality time would be resentment because you might want to be spending your time doing something else.
mm.
Yep. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's always very interesting to look at these things. And I think that if we are feeling resentful towards our partner around love languages, then we need to look at ourselves
Mm,
more so
mm,
and go, well, and like, where am I not looking after myself? Where am I not showing myself my love in my own love language, right? So there's that
mm,
even within relationship. But then the other
mm,
side of it as well is that the thing with love language is that it has to be reciprocal. So this
mm,
doesn't work if you've only got one person showing love to their partner in the partner's love language and not receiving a damn thing.
mm,
So this only works if it's a reciprocal arrangement.
mm.
Yep,
Yeah, there's true love in the relationship and deep respect, because really every offering in a relationship is given through respect of the other party. Um,
totally.
when you don't respect anybody anymore, you don't give, and
Mm,
there is the opposite types of behavior. So, if you're in love and you have deep respect for each other and a real reverence, then it would be the want to offer
yep,
that type of love and that type of service. Mm.
yep, absolutely. Oh well, good discussion again. And I just want to remind everyone Helen's birthday yesterday. So when you're watching the replay here, just drop a happy birthday in the comments for Helen.
Thank you
And
very much, everyone.
and Helen, hope you had an awesome day yesterday.
Did, I
So
did.
so what did you get up to? You spent some time with your kids, and what else did you do?
Well, my children were actually stuck in Queensland for an extra week. So I got them back on the evening of my birthday, which was
Yep.
really, really wonderful. So that was
Oh, so good.
extra special.
Yep.
Yes. That
Well,
was my
hope you had
best present in the world.
good, 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 good. Well, hope you had a wonderful day. And remember to give Helen lots of love in the comments. Lots of
Thank
love
you.
because her love language is words of affirmation. So make sure. All right. We'll leave it at that. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you are, oops, what's this? Oh, there we go. There's another one. Happy birthday, Helen.
Thank you,
There you
Mark.
go. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. And let us know what you thought of this episode. And if you're listening on podcast, please feel free to leave us a review and some comments and let us know what resonated with you. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and leave us a comment there as well. And if you think of anybody that you believe might benefit from this episode or any of the other ones that we've done or will do in the future, please feel free to share them. And we will see you next week on King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.